East Coast, West Coast, I gave George a big buckle. I'm just seeing if you wore it. Yeah, I think his name is Grant Davis. Is that his name or Davis Grant? Grant Davis. He was talking about irony, about the fire pit and the spare the air did. The other irony, if anybody saw when they came in early, that Peloton, all those bicycles going back and forth, and George hated that. My brother Ira and I came to visit him when he got the Sonoma County Award presentation, and there was a similar biking event going on. And we got to the house and he kept saying, "God, I hate those people." Don't you know you're like in a serious situation? Just liking other people probably isn't the way to go. One thing I do want to do is thank from the Snyder family outside of California. My brother Andre, who's not here, his wife Wanda, my wife Elena, my daughter Erin and her family, and my cousins Greg and his son Alexander. We represent another side of the Snyder family, and we want to say thank you for all the people on the west side of California, and as I found out last night, there's another demarcation, West Sonoma. Thank all you people for really putting our arms around George and his family, bringing them into your lives, and probably it's overwhelming to me. And you brought them in, you loved them. So George and Sarah, Cree and Jesse and Sam and Toby, you know you guys are good arms here in West Sonoma. Now a lot has been said about my brother, but people never grew up with him. My brother George stood out to most people for two things. He was unique, and he lived his life doing what he wanted to do. Not many of us can say that, make that claim, because life has a tendency to push us in directions we don't necessarily want to go. But George had none of that. He always went in the direction he wanted to go. His uniqueness, it started at birth. He was born to two World War II veterans in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1944. His birth was a big occasion, recognized by many and seemingly chronicled by all, based on the detailed writings in his voluminous baby book. The recognition of the one came to light as George, our younger brother Andre, and myself were sorting through our mother's effects last year following her death when we came across the baby books. George's book was piled high with well wishes, predictions, pictures, limitless details on alertness, first bird, first heat. The book virtually strained against its binder. My book, by contrast, had a few scribblings and a whole lot of blank lines. Andre's book was still wrapped in the manufacturer. George, he was a beautiful baby with soft caramel skin and a stand of loopy, wavy hair. My mother figured she couldn't top that. So why have any more baby pictures taken after dinner? So she didn't. For my third grade class baby picture contest, I had to enter George's picture. You won. I came home and I said, as a child, George was so unique. He didn't grow or evolve like we all do. A slow evolution. a year. Totally. Since I can remember, he would go into his room marked with a sign, "Keep out, enter at your own peril." With an armload of books that he got from the library, he disappeared into the room. After it seemed like months had gone by, he emerged with a new persona. His first iteration was that of the sci-fi writer, and he was bent our ears with strange stories of alien takeovers and life on distant planets. Look you in the eye. Something was going on. 6 months later, he was a fur trapper from the Great North. And he would be wearing the skins and pelts of the critters unlucky enough to have stepped into his traps that he placed in the creeks near our home. Tomahawks and hatchets. And I swear to goodness, he made an ancient aboriginal throwing stick that you see like on Discovery Channel. And with his ever-present stack of books, ever-thickening glasses, and his rail-thin build, and braces on his teeth, you would have thought he had been teased and bullied for being what is now known as a nerd. But who would do that to someone who had all those knives and mysterious throwing sticks that was so effective? Next, he became a country western singer. Came out of the house with a straw hat, guitar, and a drawl. Then boom, he was a beatnik. He had like a fake turtleneck sweater, you know, Dickie, yeah. And he'd come out and he had like a plaid shirt on, and he'd be beating on these bongos. Andre, even my younger brother, alludes to it in the memorial. And he's beating on these drums and he's singing these rambling, angry poems. And he's beating on the bongo drum. So, you know, we all said, okay, we'll go along with that. Then he switched on us and became a brooding jazz buff. And he was listening to the screeches of Ornette Coleman and Miles Davis while he was slouched down in the sofa, sitting on like his third vertebrae and answering nobody. And this kind of gauzy haze of a look. Then one day, if I'm lying, I'm flying. George came out of his room, a golfer. He had like a glove-type t-shirt, khaki pants, and he started caddying at the local country club. So he could play on Mondays when they allowed caddies and women to play. A long time ago. And it was the weirdest thing. So, and I'm surprised Andre, like I said, he alludes to that in the program, but I'm hurt, and he came around again just as George came out. I hit him again. So I can't remember how I even remembers this. It was like brain dead. So now he's 17, and he goes off to college. This is like 1962, 69. And he came home one day sporting what one day would be called an afro, but George and his best friend George June called him Fiji. And my father had long ago given up. But my mother thought he could still be saved from himself But she first had to know what he was on, and so she sent me into his room when he was sleeping to check for needle tracks. I found none, and that made things even more perplexing. From there, it was off to jobs in Canada, in California, which he loved. He married, had 2 great children, Jessica and 3. Married again, and then met Sarah, whom he couldn't say enough about, and they had Sam and Toby. But the beauty of his whole life's trip was that he did exactly what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. My gosh, his career was based on writing about the out of doors. Writing, which he loved. The out of doors, which he loved. And he convinced somebody to pay him for his hobbies. As most here can attest, George only talked about what he wanted to talk about also. And for that, he and I argued all the time.
The camera watching.
If the original topic was sunspots or Jarling tea, he had a way of getting it back to an American Indian tribe in Washington State, or the proper way to go around the piss bag when you're dressing out a deer. It would make me furious, and my brother Andre or Sam would get the ball rolling and sit back and watch the fireworks. I was so mad. That's not the topic we're talking about. Because George only did what he wanted to do, and only talked about what he wanted to talk about, it sometimes made me mad at him. Sometimes it made me envious of him. But most of the time, it made me love him.